let's get ready for another episode of Hometown Family Plot Cemeteries. So today on the Hometown Historian channel, we're actually going to be dealing with the Behm family. There's two cemeteries southwest of Annville, and there's the Behm Cemetery number 1, which has 15 burials, and then Behm Cemetery number 2, however you pronounce it, it's Behm, number 2, which only has 5. Now, I went out there because I wanted to live film like I do these small family plots. And unfortunately, the first one is right next to the road. It's on a Peace Lane, but there's right next to chicken barns, the long farm ones. So they had a stop bio something or the other, and you're not allowed, no trespassing. The other cemetery I could actually get back to, but it was so far off the road. It was probably, I'm guessing, at least 400 or 500 yards, and it's just a little too far for me to walk, and especially on unsteady like farm fields. Plus, I didn't feel comfortable walking across somebody's farm fields that far, even though I think legally you're allowed to visit cemeteries. It's just something I didn't feel comfortable with. So I wanted to go ahead, and I got the pictures off findagrave.com of the two cemeteries. The first cemetery, there's only one picture. The second one, there's a picture of the gate, and then that one has sort of fallen apart. So I actually, from looking from the road on the other side of Peace Lane, I think I could distinguish where it was. On the GPS, where you have the map over, like the satellite map, you can actually see where it is, but at least one of the 4 surrounding walls has fallen in, and it's just sort of in disrepair. I think they take care of it pretty good. The one that's right next to the road, the first Behm Cemetery, that one's in actually quite good shape. And later in the video, I'll wind out reading off the names of the individuals, but I want to talk about the history. The surname Behm it was first found in Germany, and you'll usually have Behem. Later, the name, when it them coming to America, probably in the late 18th century or 19th century, 1800s, it changed over. It's still, there's some people with this original spelling, but a lot of them are Beohm, I believe, so it almost looks like Bohm. Is more like the anglicized version, Englished up version of the name. So where exactly in Germany? They came from several different areas of Germany, probably southern Germany, the Palatinate, and apparently they distinguished themselves quite well over time, and eventually were elevated to the ranks of nobility. That's why we have the coat of arms here. They a lot of different spelling, actually. They have here, I'm seeing like various, and it's mainly German. I think it's from over there. You'd have an AE, HAMM. It's probably about 20 different spellings of that, but the main spelling is the BEHM, or the German version of BEHEM, and eventually, like I said, the anglicized version would be the BEOHM, I believe it is. So they just add the O and add the anglicized version. What I've been able to see, the migration, the earliest Behm that came over was a Peter Behm, who landed in America around 1731, and then they have a Johann Philipp Behm in 1741, landed in Philadelphia, in Pennsylvania. There was a Philip Behm that arrived in 1761, once again in Pennsylvania, and a John Behm who landed in 1764. And then there was a second group of individuals, I believe in around 1846, started to arrive. But Pennsylvania is probably the most area where there's the most of the Behms, because it's not a real common name. And Annville happened to be one of the areas that they settled, which is this cemetery. They were mainly farmers from the start, which is what a lot of people were, the German immigrants. They chose farming or, some other like millworking, that type of stuff. But they really were quite influential in the area. The one married into the Kreider family of Annville, who was probably the predominant family, like the industrial family of the Annville area in the mid to late 1800s. So let's go to the cemeteries and let's talk a little bit about the individuals that are buried there. All right, so this is the first cemetery, the Behm Cemetery number 1. The oldest one is a Jacob Behm, who was born in 1759, and he actually has the spelling of the Boehm, so I was wrong where the O was located. Until 1822, I assume it's probably his wife, Ann Behm, 1761 to 1822. I would think there's a good chance they were one of the children of one of those first ones that either arrived in 1731 or probably more likely the 1741, the John Philip Behm, and they actually changed their name almost immediately. So that was sort of the late 1800s where they switched it over to the Boehm. They had a Christian Behm, that's the Behm, from 1785 to 1853. Abraham Behm from 1795 to 1814. Sarah, and this is the Boehm, 1821 to 1822, so just a child. And then you have an Amelia Horst, 1831 1850. Joseph Behm, Behm, 1832, infant. Samuel Kettering. Kettering were a big family in that area as well, 1835 to 1837. Daniel Harrison Behm, 1841 to 1845. And then an Aaron Horst, 1848 to 1950. Mary Jane Horst, 1849 to 1849, infant once again. And then Sarah Ann Horst, 1851 to 1852. And that is the first cemetery. So these people were the descendants of those very first individuals who wound out coming to America, which is pretty neat to just see. These were probably the very first ones were the children. And that cemetery had 12 memorials in it. The second, the Behm Cemetery, was actually only 5. It's an Ann Behm from 1771 to 1840, Christian Behm, 1809 to 1857, Nancy Behm was 1842 to 1845, a child, Rudolph Behm, 1761 to 1844, and then a Rudolph Behm again, 1803 to 1843. So that's the Behm family in those two family plots. So once again, these were the children, the very first of the children of these individuals that came to the New World from Germany, and that's the Behm Family Cemeteries. I wish I would have been able to film these live, because it's just, you have that connection, that tangible touch, and unfortunately it's just, the one was semi-accessible, but just a little too far for me to try to walk, just over unstable ground. The last thing I need to do is injure myself at this stage just because of my balance being off. And the first one was not accessible at all. These are, once again, these are on private property, so out of respect, I don't want to go into somebody's property that I'm not supposed to. It may be perfectly okay, but I just don't want to test that. So it's just sort of how I feel about those things. But as always, I want to say thank you for coming along. If you have any more information or something on the families, cool. Add it in the comments. And as always, we'll see you all about town.